My name is Emily. I'm a paintings conservator and I specialise in modern and contemporary paintings. Mama invited me to come and look at the collection. I wasn't familiar with Alfred W Eustace at all, and when I came across these paintings, it was just so fascinating to see these beautiful historic objects that have captured a time and a place, and that ingenuity of artists using whatever materials are around and the gum leaves, and also to see such big gum leaves. I was a bit surprised by that. I just thought they were just these like fascinating objects in themselves, and that's why I kind of was drawn to these paintings and thought they'd be really interesting to talk about from a conservation perspective. Alfred W Eustace was born in 1820 in England and came to Chiltern, Victoria in 1851. Eustace was an early Australian colonial painter, and he painted generally in the Chiltern area of Victoria.
These works came into our collection in 2009. They joined another A.W. Eustace work in the collection, depicting the arrival of the first paddle steamer to Albury in the 1850s. The condition was reasonably poor. The varnish had tarnished, and we sent them off to the Grimwade Centre in 2010 for conservation, where that varnish was removed. And the works have returned in a beautiful condition. It's hard to imagine that they're 150 years old.
I'd really like to learn more about the leaves that Eustace painted on. So we've come out to Chiltern to really reimagine the environment where he would have foraged for the leaves that he worked on.
Paintings like these are just really represent a landscape that's almost disappeared from Australia. They show us what the landscape looked like when settlers first came here and what we've lost over time.
So we're here with Phil to give us a rundown of the difference between the white box and red box gums.
So the leaves you've shown me come from red box and white box trees, and this place, the Chiltern Mt-Pilot National Park, has some great examples of those. These box woodland areas, they really represent something of a remnant of something that once was. They were really heavily impacted, firstly by gold mining. Outside of that, you had the farmers coming in, widespread clearing of woodlands for agriculture. So back in Eustace's time, there would have been quite a lot of impacts. Although it's in a younger state development, it's still fairly good condition because we've got all the major components. We've got the large trees, and we've got some of the shrubs, like these wattle shrubs and so on.
I really love the language that you use, like it's in a good condition is how we describe the painting as well. That kind of, I guess, represents this area before it was really damaged.
Eustace's leaves are just really emblematic of something that's lost. I mean, with these woodland habitats, particularly with the white box, red box associations, there's only 0.05% of that distribution of original species left in the wild. And that's because of human activity closely associated with clearing for agriculture. Okay, so here you've got, this is red box.
So what makes a red box leaf distinctive?
They're smaller than white box leaves, got quite a round penny-shaped leaves, and they often have a heart cut into the top of them.
Okay.
And they don't have the peak, that little arrow that you see in the white box.
What strikes me about this is that the texture of the bark is really similar to the patterns that you find in a paint layer and in Eustace's paintings. So the white box, a really distinct feature is this white
White splotchiness.
this has a little point, so it's a white box.
Yep.
Okay, because lots of Eustace's leaf paintings have been classified as both red and white box.
Yeah, and I'd say he probably used a mix. It'd be interesting to pick back through his paintings and find out which is red and which is white.
Well, I think after this we'll be able to tell now.
And it would be even more interesting to take genetic samples and then go and do some sampling in the wider bush community and find out roughly where they came from.
So you could actually identify a region or like a hillside.
Maybe even the tree that he took originally.
Wow.
You know, maybe it's still standing.
So the one thing I've noticed when I pick it up and look at it, there's not really any front or back. They seem quite similar.
We call that concolorous, so the leaves are the same,
Right.
both front and back, and they have this sort of white waxy coating.
God, I'm going to use that term in conservation now. Just feeling it, the surface, it feels like it would really take to the oil paint as well. It would be a lovely surface to paint on. So I can understand why an artist would be drawn to this kind of leaf. What do you think? Are these holes that are in a few of these? Are these just insect and are quite common?
Yeah, or it could have been where a bird has pecked an insect off and put a hole in the leaf. It's just natural wear and tear on the leaf, and it's very common.
So I wonder, as a conservator and repairing these objects, that some of the fills that might have happened on the surface could have been from Eustace as he painted. So being out here, I can really imagine Eustace sitting here with his sheep and like foraging for these gum leaves and trying to find the most appropriate shaped one, and then sitting there and just painting what he sees around him. So as I look at this painting, the first features I notice is the distinct support that it's painted on. The leaf structure has such a different shape to the usual square format. So you're instantly drawn into this beautiful miniature landscape because of the unique material that they've used. And one of the distinctive features of this leaf is the undulations in the leaf in its natural form. So these works haven't been pressed so they're incredibly flat like a board would normally be. You can really see the shapes and the movements in the leaf. And as we look closer, you can see the vein structure as well. And within that vein structure, then you start to notice the subtle cracks that have appeared in the surface. This work was painted in 1870, and one can expect these cracks to develop. These cracks might sound a bit ominous, but they are incredibly stable and won't relate to any further damage in the future. Paintings from this era usually have been varnished, and a varnish, as it ages over time, it discolours and yellows and can really disfigure details within the artwork. When Mama sent these paintings to be treated at the Grimwade Centre, they did a beautiful job of removing this yellow and reticulated varnish. And when I say reticulated, I mean the way the varnish has gathered, and which is kind of similar to the way a mud paddy would dry. The Grimwade Centre has done a beautiful job of removing that and then reapplied the varnish so it's got a lovely even gloss to it. And this varnish also helps saturate the colours, so you get those really glossy, intense dark colours, and the blacks are just shiny and beautiful. So when we look at Eustace's technique, it's not incredibly refined, but you can see the way he's changed his brush strokes to describe different areas in the painting. So in the background, he's used a more stubble effect, which helps blend and fog, I guess, those features. But in the foreground, there's more sharp contrast brush strokes and paint combinations being used. So we can see in the foreground, there's right near the stem, there is a beautiful tree trunk that has a lovely bit of fleshy toned paint on the left-hand side, and right next to it is this really dark, wider brush stroke, and that gives the contrast of the foreground image. So it's really reminiscent of this region, which I think is such a lovely link back to the countryside here.